Shovel Knight.
A game so great I honestly could make an entire review on it. But that's not what we're gonna do here today. Right now, I'm gonna rank every boss from Shovel Knight. I was originally gonna factor in music into my rankings, but since this game's soundtrack is amazing overall, I really couldn't rate them over the other when it comes to music, because they're just all so great. First off, Black Knight. Just like a lot of video game characters, Samus, Link, Sonic, Kirby, Sora, Shovel Knight has a dark counterpart to himself. I would say he's a good first boss. He's basically a more upgraded, evil Shovel Knight. You can even deflect his purple blast he fires at you. One time I was playing this level with a friend, and we died like 4 times. Maybe it's because we were bad at the game, but he kind of felt difficult as a first boss. But I'd still give him an 8 out of 10, so I kind of have a thing for that whole evil version of the character you're playing as trope. Which fits right in, because this whole game is just a tribute to old Nintendo NES games of the past. King Knight. He's a pretty basic boss, all things considered. He just kind of jumps around and occasionally does a little sword slash. Where things get interesting in the boss fight is when confetti falls from the ceiling. So I'd give him like a 6.5 out of 10. Whenever I play this level, I've always beaten him on the first try. He's not too hard to be frustrating, he's just a little bit too easy to be interesting. But I'd take too easy over too hard any day. Unlike King Knight, I don't think I've ever beaten Spectre Knight in the first try. I feel like he strays into being too hard. Give any first time player the controller for this boss fight, and I guarantee they will either be hit by the scythe he throws or by the scythe slash. It's not really clear what you're supposed to do when he hits you with the scythe slash for the first time, but it's not too hard to get the timing down after you understand what you're supposed to do. The fight gets even harder when you have to fight him in the dark. Not to mention all the skeleton enemies you have to fight at the same time. If this boss came later in the game, I'd probably give it a higher score. But you could literally face this guy right after you beat the first level, which just kind of feels wrong. So I'd probably give him like a 6, like in fairness level, but if he was a late game boss, I'd probably give him like an 8. Plague Knight is probably the most all over the place boss. On some parts he's not that hard to fight, but on other parts he just goes insane. He's constantly jumping around, throwing projectiles at you, teleporting all over the place. He is really annoying to fight. This is probably a personal thing, but I've never had too hard of a time fighting Plague Knight, even though he is pretty annoying. So I'd give him like a 6. How others feel about Plague Knight is how I feel about Mole Knight. I hate this boss fight. He moves around so fast out of nowhere, giving you very little reaction time, and he also has fire bursts that are homing. To this day, I still don't know how to dodge them. He also slides on the floor that shoots out sparks at the same time. Plus, while all this is going on, there's lava falling from the ceiling. And whenever he's vulnerable for even a second, he starts throwing walls at you, which just drags the fight way past its welcome. So far in the game, this is definitely my least favorite boss. Some of the ideas are good, but it's just too much for one boss, and it becomes so tedious. 4 out of 10. Fortunately, Treasure Knight is an improvement of a boss compared to Mole Knight. He actually telegraphs his attacks, giving you time to dodge. His other attacks are manageable. Yeah, water physics aren't all that fun in a video game, but it's not too bad in this boss fight. I found it annoying in the level itself, but here it's fine. 7 out of 10. I really like Polar Knight, like a lot. I don't really know why, but I feel like he strikes a good balance between challenging and manageable. It helps that he's a big target, so he's easier to jump on compared to the other bosses, but his battle definitely is no slouch. If this battle came at the beginning of the game, like Spectre Knight, maybe I'd rank this differently, but as is, I think it's really fun. I give it an 8.5 out of 10. Tinker Knight's pretty cool too. This is the first time we've had truly great bosses back to back in my opinion. I really like the beginning part. I'm always a fan of little joke boss fights in video games, and this one's no different. The boss fight itself is very Mega Man inspired, and since this whole game is semi-Mega Man inspired, it feels right at home here. And I'm giving this one a 9 out of 10, closer to an 8 than a 10, but whatever. Next, we have Propeller Knight, and I think he's a pretty good boss, and fitting for the final boss of the normal levels. Sure, he's definitely the hardest knight we've had to face so far, but I think it's pretty appropriate, considering it's the last of the normal stage bosses. He definitely has a lot of stuff going on in the battle, but it never feels unfair or cheap. Plus, he has the best looking background of the normal boss stages. I'd give it like a 7.5 out of 10. It's pretty good. Alright, first boss of the final part of the game, Black Knight. This boss is insane, but he kind of prepares you for the battles to come, so it works. This is a wildly different fight from the beginning of the game, so I wouldn't even call it recycling of content. He's pretty much the first boss, but on steroids. I'm giving this one a 9, as I also really like the context of the fight within the story. Speaking of recycled content, the next part you fight is all of the bosses from the game in a gauntlet. I really got nothing to comment here. I just wanted to bring it up since these are technically boss fights, but they're the same ones as before, so I'm not gonna re-rank them. I do find it funny how the bosses are just casually waiting their turn at the table like it's just another day at the office. I'm ranking the Enchantress and the final boss in the same category as they're equally as hard and they come back to back. Everything you have learned will be put to the test, and there's little room for error in this fight. Sure, it can feel very difficult, but that makes sense because it's the final boss of the game, so it should be hard. I also really like how climactic it is, and how it brings the whole story together. I was legitimately on the edge of my seat when I beat it for the first time. I'd give it a 10 out of 10. It's a worthy ending to this already fantastic game. If somehow you haven't played it yet, I highly recommend it. It's well worth your money. It only costs $25 for the Treasure Trove edition, which includes all of the DLC, which are also great. And if you have played the game, how would you rank the boss fights? I've heard varying thoughts about them in the past, so I'd be curious to hear what you all think of them. Anyways, that's it. That's my list. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you guys play Shovel Knight, because it's a pretty good game. And with that, this is Lincoln, also known as Venox, signing out.